Hello, everyone. Is this thing on? It is 9 a.m., Sunday, August 31st. This is my first ever live podcast I've ever done. I started doing these, I believe it was around 2012 on the old Gator Sports message board. So none of the ones I've ever done, we've ever been any good. And as the years went on, we got lousier and lousier. I stopped doing them. I couldn't handle them anymore. And when the product stinks, you don't feel like doing all the prep. This year, I wanted to give everyone a little more content, but I didn't want to do a long prep session and do these big things during the week. So I figured, hey, let's just try one live where I don't have any time to prepare, and whatever comes out of my mouth stays the way it is. And we're just going to interact with people live on the Gatorchatter message board. And if you're a premium member at Gatorchatter, you can come in. I'm keeping an eye on the board as I talk here. And we're going to go from here. Now, the game last night was really just a glorified scrimmage. And over the years, we've had games like this where what you want to do is you want to start off the season with a win. Everybody wants that. No one wants to start off the season with a loss. But the problem is with games like this is there's no satisfaction in winning. And what we saw last night was a team that was even worse than what we normally deal with. So what do you take from a game like that? And when the expectations are so low, you got to win big. Any misstep just causes more grumbling among the fan base. You know, every time we fail to get a first down, you know, the sky is falling. It really isn't any fun. There's far more, it seems like, to lose than to gain in games like this. So we got Long Island University. They get paid $525,000 to come to the Swamp. You saw with their program, they don't even have lights on their field. So $525,000 goes a long way for them. I don't know really what it does for us. These are the kind of games, the only thing you're hoping for is to get some good live reps and to avoid getting anyone hurt. Now, it really went as well as it possibly could, particularly defensively. I mean, when Long Island had the ball, they had absolutely no chance at all. It was it was a complete joke. And as the game went on, we had no penalties. They kept being penalized. Nothing. I remember when someone made a comment, you know, man, I wish we could get this crew all the time. It's the first time I can remember in all these years that our fans never had a single complaint about the officiating. And so it was our first time with no penalties since 2021. It was our first shutout since 2021. DJ Lagway, it was a big deal to get him in the game as he'd been all summer sitting around, with a cast on his leg. And he definitely looked rusty, and the play calling was dinking and dunking. We don't know if that was deliberate or not. When it comes to Billy Napier and his play calling, you really don't know because it all kind of looks the same. Where we're dinking and dunking when we really don't feel we should be. Jaden Baugh was everything we were hoping he could be. Now, he won't be playing glorified high school teams going forward, but in terms of his vision and his balance, he was incredible. He reminded me a little bit of Le'Veon Bell, if you remember him, used to play for the Steelers, in that he would hesitate a little bit when he got the ball in his hands and wait just a moment for the hole to open, and then he would hit it. A lot of patience, and if you think you're going to arm tackle a guy, you can forget it. And as long as DJ Lagway and our quarterbacks can keep teams honest, he's going to have a huge year. And we know Billy Napier wants to run the ball. That's really what he wants to do. And there's going to be the biggest issue we're dealing with all year is the play calling. That is going to happen week after week after week. It was happening last night live in our Gatorchatter chat box. I got an email midway through the game from my father who was complaining about it and in harsh terms, and he said, Billy sucks, I think is what he said. And that was in a 55-0 win. So with our schedule coming up, you can imagine what we're going to be dealing with. Billy Napier in the offseason decided he wasn't going to hire an OC and that he was going to live or die on that hill. He was going to call plays. He thinks he knows what's best. We're going to find out if that is true. We got to see some amazing freshmen like Vernell Brown, who grandfather played. His father played under Zook, I believe, and he was spectacular. He made, of course, that spectacular Odell Beckham type catch where he's running backwards. I remember watching the replay and saying to myself, Vernell, if you just keep running, you're going to run under the ball. Instead, he turns around and he runs backwards for the last 10 yards, and he ends up having to make a spectacular catch. I hope, and a little bit of film study, they'll say, Vernell, just keep running and run under the football. But it goes to show we have a lot of playmakers, and we had a lot of playmakers that sat out, like this superstar freshman, Dallas Wilson, who's supposed to be, by all accounts, the real deal. We have all these playmakers, and is Billy going to be able to use them? That is the question of the year, and we're going to be dealing with that all year long. And it's great to win, but boy, if we lose a game here or two, or we shouldn't, and we all fear that's what's coming, Billy Napier has a lot to prove. He's in the doghouse with everybody, and digging himself out of that doghouse is going to take some big wins. Another big question was the backup quarterback position, and that was big. We hadn't got a lot of news on that. We had a bunch of guys fighting for the position that we didn't know who had pulled ahead. We had guys like Warner who'd played in the past and had been unimpressive. So they bring in this freshman Brown in the second half, and he looked great. He looked polished. He went through his progressions. He had a great arm. He ran a little bit. And, of course, every week he's not going to be playing middle school U, but it gave everyone a little bit of hope that if and when Lagway goes down, and there's a big fear there that he will, we actually have someone who could come in, make some plays, and win the game for us with the games we have coming up. And of course, there's been a lot of talk about the schedule, of course, and even the podunk schools that were supposed to be just easy wins, like Florida State. We saw what they did, and even USF, who we have to play next week, beats a ranked team for the first time in 9 years, and suddenly even these teams are suddenly looking, oh boy, here we go. It's going to be a hell of a year. The defense. One thing about no penalties is no one looked, on either side of the ball, no one looked confused. Everyone looked like they knew what they were doing. No false starts. People didn't seem to be out of position. The defense looked great. They looked excited. They were running around. Guys like Miles Graham look like an animal out there, and he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Another legacy Gators. We've got 3 or 4 or more on the team, and it's really great to see that. Just looking, see what we've got going in chat right now. Yeah, the guys didn't force any throws. We didn't have these. A lot of times last year we had these balls thrown that should have been picks and were not. It's so hard to tell with the level of competition what we're getting into. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to bring Jason Walker on. Now, people say, well, who's Jason Walker? Jason Walker has been, of course, Jason's been a friend of mine since 1992, but he's one of the biggest Gators I've ever known. I've had him as a regular guest since I started doing these podcasts. And Jason isn't just some schlub fan. Jason's been, for 20 years, has been lived in Atlanta for years, been part of the Atlanta sports media, really on the side, and particularly the Atlanta Hawks for many years, still is today, still does a regular appearance on the Bill Shanks show in Atlanta about Atlanta sports, even today, all the time. When Bill needs Atlanta Hawks news, he brings Jason on. But Jason's also interviewed dozens of athletes, anywhere from guys from Julius Erving up to Patrick Mahomes. So Jason is a sports guy. He's also one of the best fantasy players and daily sports guys you'll ever talk. You'd ever need advice on a bet, reach out to Jason. Let me see if I can get him in here. Jason, are you still with me? Well, Jason disappeared. You got to bring in a guy, and you're live. You can't screw this up. And what does he do? He bails out of the chat box. Speaking of the chat box, I got a bunch of people in there. Does anybody have any questions? I'm looking at a lot of comments. I was expecting to field a few questions. There's a lot of Gator Sports message boards. We're the only ones I know of that have a live chat. So anytime, day or night, you can come in. There's usually people in the box, and you can talk to them live. On game day, it's a blast. There'll be 20, 30, 40, 50 people in there, all complaining at the same time. And you deal with the ups and downs, mostly the downs. I mean, we won 55-0. If you'd been in the chat box, probably 85% of it was negative. Okay, Jason's back. Jason, are you there?
Yeah, I thought in classic Ox fashion, I got kicked out, booted already from the room already. So no, it's I'm here, and thanks for that great build up. Only to be booted from the system. Awesome.
Jason, what were your impressions last night?
Yeah, well, I mean, the big thing about a game like that is just nobody of importance gets hurt. I think we escaped scot-free from injury there, so that was nice to be able to get out of there, play a clean game as you said there. I think what we saw though is we saw a couple things. We saw that Jaden Baugh is a cut above everybody else in that running back room. He was obviously heads and tails above it. When they brought in Jacoby Jackson, I thought there was, Aaron, a significant drop off in execution there, and so we just kind of want Ball in there. But knowing how Billy likes to rotate, I can see that being a real irritant in the fan base, because Ball is clearly better than anybody else in that room. At least as it showed last night against inferior competition, Ball dominated. Nobody else did. I really felt the same about Vernell Brown. I didn't feel like any of the other receivers, other than the tight ends that we saw there, which I know you were happy about. I thought Brown stood out, and I really didn't feel like, I didn't feel like Eugene Wilson did much. I know they were throwing the sideways passes, and it wasn't working even against Long Island. I thought that was something that stood out. That Brown really emerged as the leader in that room. And then, of course, the kicking game. You're hoping that Trace Mack got that all out of his system. Yesterday, 3 misses, equaling how many he missed for the entirety of the season last year. We were calling him Trey Shank in the house last night. So you like that, and of course, putting to bed the backup quarterback situation, like you talked about. Tramel Jones played very capable against inferior competition. how he would do against somebody like Texas, obviously, like we saw last year, remains to be seen. But at least there was some competence and some playmaking ability back there. So Mel Jones looked really good. But ultimately, Aaron, we didn't see much about the defense. We saw the run game, but the Long Island only attempted 11 passes, and a lot of those were late. So we didn't really get to see how the secondary and the pass rush would be there. So, I mean, ultimately, nothing really changed. It didn't move the needle, I'm sure, for anybody except in the margins on there. Billy definitely didn't instill any confidence in his play calling early on, but yet in the second half, we saw things open up a lot more. So maybe, they were keeping it tight, but man, would have liked to have seen Lagway throw a little bit more. But overall, came out clean game, no injuries, blowout, shutout. I mean, that's probably the best you could hope for.
I thought I saw on the back of Wilson's pads, near the back on his waist there, that he had written YAC. I don't know if anyone else saw that.
Yard after catch. Yard after catch, yeah. Yak.
Yeah, and of course he had negative yardage on 5 catches or whatever, which was pretty ironic. He was obviously frustrated. They were counting on him to make a move when he got the ball in his hands, and he kept getting tackled. But this is the kind of stuff we've seen under Billy now for several years. We've got to get these guys more room to move around when they get these short passes. Yeah,
I mean, we didn't see him do anything except catch the ball behind the line, and we know he can get open down the field with his speed and shiftiness. So, like I said, I don't know if it was that first team, seemed like everything was kept close to the vest, and then when Tramel Jones came in, we saw it open up a lot more. All of a sudden, he's throwing into open spaces 30 yards down the field. So, they got to be a little more creative in how they get Wilson the ball in there, because people have seen this on tape already. Like you said, nothing new for Billy. So none of the even UCF's or USF's going to be hip to that jive, and you got to be a little more creative trying to get him the ball, because he's clearly talented and can get you a lot of yak, but not when he's standing there catching the ball with 2 guys around him.
Yeah, and in terms of Trey Smack, the field goals didn't bother me that much. He didn't miss them by much. They didn't bother me yet. Now, it doesn't take much for a kicker to get rattled mentally, and I hope that doesn't continue. But it's not like he was shanking them into the stands like we've seen with some of our kickers in the past.
Yeah.
And I know there was some grumbling last night. Someone made a comment that it always seems like Billy is playing for 3, and that is frustrating when it looks like Billy. We get down to a certain area and Billy kind of takes his foot off the gas. We're obviously going to need Trey Smack,
right?
But man, I'd like to see us go for the end zone more often.
I think Billy not playing for 3, but he's okay with it. Like, that's something that you don't want to see. You want to see a little bit more killer instinct out of your head ball coach, because that's what the players, or you don't want your players suddenly being okay with not getting the job done, not getting the first downs, and, well, we're in field goal range, so at least we'll get some points. You don't want to see that. So I think that's what we all pick up on, Aaron. It's that Billy's okay with 3, and I think in situations and against certain competition, you can't be. Now, we remember back to his first season against Tennessee, he went for it knowing he had to score to keep up with the Volunteers. So he's got that in his bag somewhere. Certainly against a team like Long Island, Billy wasn't going to press the issue, but at some point these guys have to execute in those situations.
Well, and the focus always from the fans is on the offense. But
right.
If the defense improves, we're going to stay in a lot more games. And man, they look disciplined. I know the competition's not good, but everyone seemed to be where they wanted to be. They seemed enthusiastic. They seemed like they wanted to be there.
Yeah.
And in the past, we've seen our teams show up, even at home, looking half asleep, like they were hungover. Everyone looked like they had a great time last night, and no one really screwed up.
Yeah, I mean, again, they only threw 11 passes, so we don't know about the discipline in the secondary. We don't know the discipline in the linebacker coverage for passing. But certainly, you're right, Aaron. I noted it too, except for, I think, one play where Devin Moore lost the edge and the quarterback got around. I thought discipline was good. Assignment football was in play, and it doesn't take. I know a lot of people don't want to go back to the nightmarish memories of Grantham, but there was assignment football just wasn't present. It was just willy nilly running all over the place, just trying to tackle the ball. And we saw guys set the edge. We saw folks fill in gaps. That's what we saw, at least in the run game. So we'll see how they do against heightened competition as we gradually increase our difficulty getting into the season. But yeah, you have to be happy at least that you didn't see chaos and you didn't see guys just Leroy Jenkins off to wherever and leaving their assignments. I thought it was really good.
Well, the moment the ball was snapped, their offensive line was totally overwhelmed by ours, and we're not going to be seeing that in SEC play, unfortunately. So getting to the quarterback is not going to be as easy going forward. But something else, I was really happy to see the tight ends get involved. You mentioned that. Not just one, but two tight ends. They've been used so little the last few years, and they really can be sneaky players, especially around the goal line. And I hope we see more of that this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, they're gigantic guys. I mean, Hayden Hansen, he was all over the place there, but 6'8", and Livingston, I think, is 6'7". I mean, these guys are gigantic targets to hit down the field, and it looked like both Lagway and Jones had those as the primary reads as they went back there. At least take the tall guy near the end zone in there, which is sharper rather than trying to run Wilson around in the end zone or something like that. So the fact that these guys got it and made a couple of difficult catches for big men, and their Livingston's catch in the corner of the end zone was high skill, I thought. And just a great use of size down the field, and that should hopefully pull in the safeties a little bit more if Billy ever decides he wants to go over the top to one of his speed guys.
Yeah, and Vernell Brown, who I mentioned earlier, was spectacular. He's got to learn to run under the ball instead of running backwards. Right. But Dallas Wilson, I know we're hoping is going to also be a freshman superstar, hopefully a number one type receiver guy, and by all accounts, he's the real deal. Jason, is Billy? We have all these great weapons. Is Billy going to actually use them?
Right. Well, I mean, that's the idea. You have a quarterback that can push the ball down the field now with Lagway. We loved Graham Mertz, but that wasn't Mertz's strong suit. I don't think Billy's ever had someone here that can do it. So now Billy's got to trust the offensive line, trust Lagway to be able to get rid of the ball and not worry about negative plays and take advantage of Mizell and take advantage of Dallas and Vernell. Because what would WWSD? What would Spurrier do? Well, man, he'd be taking the top off these things with multiple patterns, and you see like Ike and Riddell and Jacquez, and I know the fan base wants to get back to having an identity like that, and they have the talent to do it. Will Billy turn it loose? He didn't in the first half with Lagway, and Lagway, frankly, looked like he was under some pressure and stepping up a little bit in there, but he needs more of that. I hope they don't play it close to the vest against USF and allow Lagway to make some mistakes so he can be more battle tested with those downfield passes when we get into the meat of the schedule where you need easier scores. You just can't grind out 18 play drives against top teams or count on that. You need to be able to have, boom plays out there. And, it's up to Billy to get us into that.
Yeah, we've got a very winnable game this week, and then we have to go to LSU at night.
Right.
And, of course, LSU goes to Clemson last night and wins. Yeah. Top 5 team on the road and wins. Oh, boy. We'll be able to talk about that more coming forward, but, I mean, we've got a lot to look forward to on this schedule, and that's why this game coming up is critical.
Right.
In terms of getting more prepared for the real grind starting in week 3. Now, USF came into the season there wasn't a lot of expectations that I think they went 7-6 last year. Now, we did struggle on the road last year, but it seemed like we struggled with everybody. But they played Boise State, who was ranked, and beat them as an underdog. Beat them 34-7. Now everyone saw that. Wow, their eyes pop out. Their first win against a ranked team since 2016. And looking at the box score a little more, it wasn't a real dominant game. I mean, USF had 372 total yards, which was actually less than Boise State. The big deal was that Boise State had lost three fumbles, which will really kill anybody. Do we really have, in your opinion, these Gators really have anything to worry about with this Bulls team coming into the Swamp on Saturday?
Well, I think if there's one thing we can take away from this game that applies to that, is that the run discipline was so good. And I think all the things we saw out of USF was breakdowns and runs and broken play runs. If the Gators maintain that sort of discipline in their run game, we didn't see a lot of USF throwing the football and challenging things. So I think, if the Gators are able to stick to it and be disciplined and, get ahead, maybe force them into more passing situations out of that, what looks to be their comfort zone of running the football. So I think that's the one thing you can take from this week that might apply is I don't think those QB runs, some of the stuff that they were doing there is necessarily going to work against this defense that we saw this week.
Well, one of the things we lost over, especially the McElwain and maybe the Mullineers to some degree, was we lost that home field advantage that we should always win in the Swamp. That's gotten better the last couple of years, and when we play at home, the confidence level, I feel much better about a win. And USF coming into the Swamp, I mean, I feel pretty good about a 20+ point victory. I've got a poll up. Well, will the Gators win by 20+, less than 20, or will they lose? And right now, more people are saying that we'll win by less than 20, which again goes to show that Gator fans are still skeptical, and they have a right to.
Good reason, yeah.
From last night, you really can't tell a lot, but it's going to take a lot for our fans to have a little bit more confidence in this team. Hopefully that'll start with a more dominant win this week. Yeah,
I mean, totally have every right to be skeptical. We're not buying the hype. I know there's a lot of folks like Pate and those guys putting big numbers on the board. I think all of us are like, well, we're the only fan base in the world that would be like, pump the brakes there. I don't think so. So there's a lot to prove. And like you said, it'll remain to be seen if they can beat USF by more than 20, but more importantly, to show that execution, to show the ability to open up the playbook, to give the probability that we could do this against better teams, pump that up a little bit more. I think that's the outcome that you want next week, obviously, along with a W to be able to do that. But until then, they should be okay with, I think it's totally fine to say less than 20. I don't think there's anything in Billy Napier's resume that says, you can bet the over on that. I think that, you definitely want to would proceed with caution, but with hopeful that they could change their previous outcomes, win by more than 20, open up the playbook. But until we see that on film, it's just hope.
So if you're Billy Napier, how do you want to approach this game this week? You want to get Lagway a lot more work? Is that what you're thinking?
Yes. I mean, if I were to being John Malkovich, it's an obscure reference, but if I could take over Billy Napier's play calling next week, I would definitely open it up to see how much time Lagway has, how much you can count on. Can get him into a rhythm of completing the deeper passes, get that receiver room engaged, and to see what can be done moving forward. That's what I would do. First of all, running a lot with Baugh or any of that. Like I said, Baugh to me, he's the one you should be protecting. I mean, obviously Lagway too, but there's such a big difference between Baugh and the rest of that room from what we saw this week on tape. I would definitely open it up, try to create more downfield, some bigger scores, put that, get that in the memory banks of all your offensive players, get the offensive line pass blocking effectively as well as they did run blocking this week. That's what I would be hoping for on there, because I feel pretty confident the defense is going to hold. Let's get some plays and see what we've got downfield.
Yeah, it'd be nice to, as in any game, put the screws to them early and force them to play from behind. I'd like to give our. You always want to make the opposition one-sided.
Right.
Force them to pass, and then we can turn this pass rush, which has been better the last couple of years, loose. We went years with no one sacking the quarterback, and that has changed the last couple of years. And some of these guys, I'm really looking forward to seeing him get after the quarterback.
Yeah, we didn't even see, obviously, Banks was in street clothes yesterday, and Sapp was involved in some gang tackling. But again, they didn't pass. That first, while the first team defense was in, they didn't pass much. So we didn't get to see them really go after it like I think you're hoping that we see this week. If they can shut down the USF run, force them into more passing situations, get to see them turned loose a little bit before we do get into the meat of the schedule.
Well, Jason, I appreciate your time today, and I'll be having you on the regular as the season goes on, and hopefully there are more happy meetings like this. I'm sure some of them will not be,
right.
And we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. So appreciate you.
You and I have seen a lot of Gator football, and we know that there's ups and downs, but being able to come back on a Sunday morning and rehash it all is what the college football season's all about. So appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason. Okay. Let me head back into chat, and I think this has gone well. There's been some technical issues, which were to be expected. The first time I've ever done a live podcast, I can't necessarily see what the people out there are seeing. So I will hopefully fix those issues as we go forward. I don't know if anyone in chat has any final comments, questions, anything about like that. And I can take these off now. I really don't like headphones. Can I show highlights? There's a question. Probably not without getting sued, but I'll have to look at that. I can share my screen and things, so we're gonna try some things going forward. But just to wrap up a little bit, I think we got most of what we were looking for out of the Long Island game. And one thing I did like at the very end of the game, we're down at the, I don't know, 10, 15, and there's just a play or two left, and we have 48 points, and I fully expect Billy just to hand off and run the clock out, and hopefully maybe little Rubio will break it and we'll get our 50 points. Just praying for a miracle. And by God, if he didn't let Jones throw the ball into the end zone to get to 55 points, and I was genuinely stunned. I don't know if the Napier of the last couple of years would have done that. We would have just run the clock out. But I think he seemed to know that either the fans or the players cared about getting 50 points. So I did like that. And if the other coach wants to complain about it, so what? Being asked about my prediction for next week, I think Florida's going to win easily. Not 55-0, but the swamp is going to overwhelm USF in a hurry. I don't know if they're going to come in overconfident after what happened last week, but I think they're in for a long day. It's going to be nothing like last year. I agree with Jason. I think they're going to let Lagway open it up a little more maybe than usual in the first half and get him going, and I think he's going to connect on some of those. I don't know if we'll have Dallas Wilson. I think we might. I'm really looking forward. He's one player I'm definitely looking forward to seeing out there on the field. So we need to win. We need to win easily. We need to win by 3 touchdowns or more. We need to cover the spread, whatever that is, for sure. the season doesn't really start until week 3, and we are going to have one heck of a tough game at LSU. Revenge game for them. Obviously, what they did was jack their confidence level up. So, yeah, we're going to find out what we're made of that night. We got plenty more to talk about until then. So, at any rate, thank you for being with me on this first live podcast. This was fun. Got a little bit to learn about the format going forward, but that's what I wanted. And I'm seeing one more question before I go. Have your thoughts changed about our odds against Texas or FSU? FSU, not yet. It's too early. I just find it impossible to believe that there's suddenly some kind of contender. I don't know. We've got a while on that one. I'll revisit that one. Texas, I've always felt confident about in that they're coming into the swamp. That's the biggest reason. And I just didn't think that Arch Manning was going to be able to live up to the hype. Now, so far he didn't. That was an incredibly hard test, and Arch Manning is going to get better, I assume. But I definitely feel like that is a game that Florida can win. But I felt that even before the game yesterday. At any rate, thank you, everybody. I will see you on Gatorchatter, and we'll do this again 9 a.m. Next Sunday. Adieu.